let's get tonight started since we know it's a little bit later in the evening. Today's event is called Let's Get This Potty Started. I'm Kendall. I support the Auggie team. I'll be helping moderate. Uh, I'm assuming you joined because you're planning to do potty training this weekend, just realized you should be doing it this weekend, or maybe you want to get the best advice for a future long weekend. In any case, we've got you covered. So a few key things before we start. One, today's session is being recorded, so don't worry about taking notes. Please use the chat to drop your questions. I'll be watching that, and so we can do Q&A at the end. In the event that there's a super relevant question, I can also bring it up in real time. But joining us tonight is Brittany Sheehan. Renowned for her no-drama approach to sleep and potty training, she's helped thousands of families through this particularly tricky and fun stage with clarity and confidence. So Brittany, thank you for being here, and I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you for having me, Kendall. I'm excited to be here. I'm just going to share my screens. Hopefully you guys can see now the little presentation. So yes, we're going to be talking about potty training. And to be clear, if you're watching this and you're not sure if you're going to actually be doing it over Memorial Day weekend, or you're just kind of curious, that's fine. This isn't going to be like you have to do it this weekend or these things won't be relevant. My hope actually is that I capture some of you who maybe thought you were going to do it this weekend, and maybe I will stop you from doing it because it's a little bit too soon. Because I was just telling Kendall that is often one of the things I'm discussing with families. But at a high level, I'll tell you guys, if you don't know me, I actually took a sneak peek at the invite list, because sometimes when I do these with Auggie, a lot of the people are my people, like they already work with me, but I saw there were a lot of new faces. So I'll briefly tell you guys, I am a potty and sleep consultant. So I work with families from birth up to age 7. So I do custom sleep plans for families where I work with them one-on-one for a couple of weeks, kind of go alongside them as they're going through the sleep process. And also have online courses for potty as well as sleep, newborn, baby, toddler, all of it. And I have a podcast called The Snooze Button. And of course, I had to be very timely because I was doing this presentation. So this week's episode is called 3 Potty Training Mistakes Not to Make. So we're going to be talking about them here. So you're going to know. I am a 3-time survivor of potty training with my own 3 kids. And more importantly, for your perspective, at this point, potty training came into my business maybe 2 years ago, 2.5. I was a sleep consultant for years before that. And at this point, about 200 plus happy families who I've worked with one-on-one to potty train. So, little PSA. One thing, and I think this is something that's important with potty training, but to me, it happens with sleep as well. And even with like parenting behavioral type stuff, you might see things in here, and maybe it's like your second child that you're potty training. You're like, oh, but I did that thing and it wasn't a problem. That is okay. There's going to be outliers in all this stuff. And the truth is, there are some kids who they're just pretty good sleepers. They're easy to potty train. They have good behavior. So you can kind of do whatever you want and like it's still going to be fine. But there's a lot more kids where they kind of need you to do things a certain way for you to have the best outcome. So if anything in here doesn't work for you, that is also okay, right? This is at the end of the day, my expertise and opinion, but everyone knows their kid best. And you have to decide what works for you and what doesn't. And that is totally fine. So we're going to talk first about like, is your child actually ready? Because you might be surprised some of the things that parents use as like reasons to potty train sometimes aren't necessarily the right ones. So let's talk about them. Ideal age, like at a very high level, 2 or 3-year-olds, right? But there is at this point, we have some like empirical data to support the age where it's probably going to be the easiest and take the shortest amount of time. So you can be, of course, on the perimeters of this and it probably will work fine. But ideally, somewhere between 30 and 35 months is where you want to do it. So basically like the older 2.5-year-olds. So boys do, and again, this is every kid's going to be different, right? But like at a high level, most often boys take a little bit longer than girls to potty train and are typically ready a little bit later in the process. So if I have a client who comes to me with a kid who's younger than this, especially if they're a boy, I will push back more like, I really don't think you want to do this at 24 months. One thing to know, there's no correlation between like when you potty train a child at any sort of like long-term metrics about like their intellectual ability or capacity to learn. And the reason I say that is because I do think there are certain things for whatever reason as parents that people love to flex on. They're like, oh, she was potty trained at 19 months. And I think they think it's like a sign that like their kid is a genius. And I don't want you to feel that pressure. Your kid might be a genius, but it doesn't mean that they are ready to potty train early, nor is it a child who's struggling to potty train. Is it a sign of something else underlying, right? It's just developmental. So in terms of like the actual signs, besides the age, like roughly they're around that age range, right? Like 30 to 35 months would be great. Good signs that they're ready are beyond the age range. They're in that age range, but they're also able to follow a simple direction, because potty training, at the end of the day, we can't like force a child to pee or poop, right? But do you feel like your child is at a place developmentally where if you were like, go pick up the red ball, they can like process that and go do it? Because you're gonna have to tell them the same thing, like the potty's over there, you can go use it, right? So they can understand a simple direction. And then some of the tactical stuff. So I have had some clients where we want to wait maybe a month or two later than we would have otherwise, because from a gross motor perspective, they're just like still working on those skills. And it's a little unfair to expect them to learn a skill that like requires them to do something that maybe they aren't quite ready to do. So they need to be able to like climb, even if it's, using handles, they can climb onto a potty seat. They can, even if they need a little help, they can kind of pull their pants up, like they can sort of figure it out with you. And they seem kind of aware of what's going on. I will occasionally have clients come to me who started, especially boys, who started when they were a little bit too young. And they're like, I don't think he knows what's going on. And I'm like, he probably doesn't. He's like 22 months old. He's just kind of like, whatever, right? So they have to kind of like be aware of what's happening. That will help a lot. And they're able to communicate their needs with you. So it's fine if the child has a little bit of a speech delay, like they don't need to be the most articulate child in the world, but that you as the parent, and if there's any other like primary caregivers who are with them a lot, they understand their needs and they can communicate like, I need to go to the bathroom, right? So those are like the true signs that a child's ready. The signs that people often use are like, they want to go to the potty. Like, oh, they know how to tell me that they peed. Like they like getting on the potty. Like that's awesome. I'm happy. And maybe that'll make it easier when you eventually start. But to me, that's no different than saying like, my kid likes candy. It's like, cool. You still can't give them candy for dinner. Probably. I mean, you can, but probably that's not the reason, right? Like, oh, they say potty words. And like, these things are just facts. They're not like a sign that they're ready for a skill, right? Much like I was just telling Kendall, I'm always like pushing people not to move 2-year-olds into beds. I hear that a lot too. Oh, they love their bed. I'm like, cool. My kids love my bed, but they're not going to get in it at night. I want them in their own beds. I can sleep, right? And even having dry diapers at night, that's a developmental thing. We'll get into that in a little bit. But not necessarily a sign that they're ready to be potty trained. And also, I just don't want you guys to feel pressure to do it just because like your neighbor or your friend or like some of the kids in their class are potty trained. I do honestly, I will say, because you can imagine I get really sleep deprived families who are going through all kinds of different issues. But the people that I find to be the most stressed in my client base by far are the potty parents. They are like the ones most likely to cry on our calls. I think a lot of it stems from feeling like shame and pressure around the process, because again, people love to flex on their kids doing it early, but people feel embarrassed when it's not going well. So don't feel like you need to do it just because somebody else is, and potentially put yourself in that place. Okay. Secondary consideration. So besides like the true, like the age and the true readiness signs, there are other reasons why, excuse me, have a little bit of water, end of the day, why you might consider potty training or not potty training. So school requirements for sure. And one of the reasons that I'm talking to you guys about this now, and I have this event this weekend for families who are potty training, is because a lot of kids, if they're starting preschool in September, and maybe not a daycare, but like a true preschool that like starts admitting kids, 3K program, something like that. Most of them require kids to be potty trained. And I always suggest if your kid is going to need to be potty trained in September, don't do it at the end of July. It's not because I expect it to be a disaster and it's going to be so hard for them, but it's definitely one of those things where like it's normal for there to be bumps along the road and they have some accidents a month or two later. And you just do not want to be in the position of they're already starting a new school and maybe they're going to school for the first time and they're like a little bit, unsure about potty. And it's like another thing you're kind of throwing at them, right? So you want them to have a couple months under their belt where like you're feeling pretty good about it before they actually start school. If you have like a huge trip coming up, that would maybe be a reason not to do it. And there are so many nuances to like what you do on a long haul flight. But like if your entire family is going, from the East Coast to the West Coast next month, I probably wouldn't potty train 2 weeks before. You're just going to like, again, throw another wrench into it. Additional children. I get this one a lot. So the biggest thing I'll hear is like, I don't want to change 2 diapers. And I'm like, I know you don't. But what you want to do less is have like your older kid like poop in the fountain at the town square because they like just learned how to potty train. You couldn't get the travel potty out fast enough. And it's like, and you're like holding a colicky newborn. I get it. But if you are like deeply pregnant or you just had a baby, like don't make your life harder unless you feel like, shoot, I waited too long and I'm like already outside the window and like we really got to get this done. I wouldn't use a baby as a reason to potty train. If anything, I would use it probably as a reason to wait. And if there's other like major things going on in your life, that could be a reason why you need to wait too, right? If you're like experiencing loss right now, there's some sort of like mental health issues. I do think potty training is kind of like it messes with your head a little bit as a parent. It's really hard to be like, you need to poop. You can't like make them poop, you know? So I think if you're in a headspace right now where things feel tough, unless it's really the right time, it's okay to wait a little bit there as well. Okay. So the basics of potty training, like how do you actually do this? I'm not going to get super into the weeds on it, but just at a high level, I think you sort of have to reframe, or I like to reframe what your goal actually is as the parent, because yeah, like ideally, ultimately you want them to just like not say anything. They just have to go pee. So they go to the bathroom and they go pee, but that's not going to happen out of the gate. You basically need your toddler to realize a couple of things. Like they need to do, and it's kind of in sequence. They need to understand the feeling of I have to go to the bathroom, because think about it, up until now, they're just playing with their Legos, they're running around in the park and they just start peeing or pooping. So to them, there's no reason for them to think about it. So all of a sudden they need to feel the sensation of like, I have to go to the bathroom and I understand, I'm like connecting what this means. And then they're able to say, okay, I feel it. I'm supposed to tell somebody, or I'm supposed to go to the potty. Like they're connecting that, and they have enough time to get that done. So some kids in this process, they start to figure out, okay, I feel the pee pee coming, and they know they're supposed to tell you, but they tell you like as they're now peeing their pants, right? But that is a step in the right direction. Like they're starting to make those connections. So you really are like teaching them a skill, right? And secondary is that they are like consistently doing it independently. They don't need to be prompt. They're not scared. They can do it with other caretakers, right? But that's really like your primary goal in those early days. So outside of elimination communication, which is a process that like I don't really subscribe to, it's something that some families choose to do, but it's not really a part of my process, which would be like teaching a 7-month-old, like holding them over the toilet so they can poop, which sounds hard, but you know, you do you. Everybody has to do their things the way that works for them. More often though, families will choose like one of these 3 kind of ways to do it. So the slow and steady is when people are like, let's like go sit on the potty so you can see what it feels like. And like, do you want to try underwear on? And like, let's like just before bed, if you want to go sit down, and it's just kind of like slowly introducing them to the concept. The wait and see would be like kind of waiting for your child to decide they want to go at whatever age that is, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Or more of like a 3-step plan. I do not like calling it 3-day, because I think if I heard that, and when I heard it as a first-time mom, I thought that meant you do it for 3 days and your child is just magically potty trained, which isn't how like anything in life works. But 3-step, yes, right? And if you've read a book like Oh Crap, like that would be an example of like a 3-step program where the parents are identifying when the child's ready and then kind of focusing on it and not really talking about it beforehand. And then it's just like, today we're potty training, and they kind of kick it off. So I recommend a 3-step plan. And if you take my course, that's what it is. The reasons, like high level why I suggest this, and again, every family has to make the choice that works for them. But I think your child, like we talked about this earlier, like your child wanting to do something is not correlated with them being ready to do something, right? Just the same way 2-year-old who wants to be in a bed, from my perspective, is probably not ready to be in a bed and like roaming around your house at 4 a.m., right? So making sure that as the parent, sometimes what our kids want is not going to correlate with what they need. And that's your job as the parent to make that call for them. I also really like this 3-step plans, because it gives kids like very clear boundaries and guidelines. It's really black and white. And I talk about this a ton with sleep. Like we understand nuance as adults, like sit here for 5 minutes, or like I'll leave the door open a crack. A 2-year-old, all they literally and figuratively hear is like the door is open to negotiate, right? So when you do a 3-step plan, it's not blurry to them. They're like, am I going to wear a diaper today? Am I going to wear underwear? It's like, I was in diapers. now I guess this new thing is happening and I'm not wearing diapers anymore. And it's really clear. And the clearer we are with kids, the easier it usually is for them to process stuff. And it's just the speed and ease of the process. Potty training is tough. So like, let's rip the Band-Aid and get it over with and not spend like 9 months waxing on about it and like hoping to kind of start to figure it out, which is kind of stressful for everybody. So the high level basics of 3-step method. And the reason I like to call it 3-step instead of 3 days, again, I don't think it always takes 3 days. It usually takes longer, but the idea is that they are initially naked. So that would mean like bottom down, right? So maybe they're wearing a t-shirt or like a short dress or something, but we're taking away diapers. And the reason they were not wearing anything on the bottom is so it's easier for them to get to the toilet and not have to worry about pulling pants on and off, right? So there's a bunch of different things we do to get them ready for the potty and used to that. And then once they're having like a lot less accidents, they're kind of picking up on it, then we start putting pants back on or shorts. And then they're starting to be able to learn how to pull their pants up and down, that piece of it. And then once accidents are like really rare, which can be in a couple of days or it can be like 2 or 3 weeks, then we introduce underwear. And the reason why you do want to have that commando phase in between naked and underwear is that some kids, underwear feels too much like a diaper to them, especially if you have the type of kid, and I don't want to keep saying it's boys or girls because that's not fair, but it is more often boys, but they're just like, I'm gonna poop my pants. Like they do not care. If there is something there to stop it from coming out, they're fine with it, which I kind of understand. You know, if your whole life you've worn a diaper and it just kind of sat there with you, like you're fine with that. That's what your life has been. So you want to make sure you have a period in between where they kind of like feel the sensation of it coming out and being gone, but still feeling it, and having to pull on the pants, you know, up and down without having the underwear to fully like catch it as it's coming out. So that's kind of like the basics of doing the 3 steps. So, and I'm going to talk about my favorite topic, bribes. So you will hear this a lot. Like your doctor will probably tell you to do it. Give them M&Ms, like give them whatever. I'm a big fan of just not using them, any type of these things. Not that you're not telling them good job and that maybe when the potty training process is over, you're like, buddy, you did such an awesome job. Let's go get ice cream, that type of thing. Sure. But not in the moment being like, if you pee on the potty, I will give you 4 M&Ms. And I will give you the most dramatic example. That's my favorite I always use. I had a client once where the mom, like the kid would not poop on the potty. And so she was like, I will give you this little like toy horse if you poop on the potty. And he was like, fine, and did it. And then she was like, shit, okay, I need to get more toy horses. She's like, I'm going to go broke. He has like 75 of these toy horses because he has to poop every day, but he won't do it unless he gets one of the toy horses. And like, we need a new plan. And like, that's kind of a dramatic example, but that's often what happens is like, it's a short-term win. And kids, either that happens in the extreme case, or they just get over it. They're like, okay, I got 2 M&Ms. Like, it wasn't that exciting. Like, what's your next game, mom? Right? And you're going to run out of stuff. And they're asking for something different. So you don't want like a life skill to be tied to a treat. Like we want them to learn how to do something that all humans have to do and be okay with it. We don't want them to feel like, unless you get this like trick, it's not going to happen and it's not going to work. And the punishments for sure just make it worse, right? And I learned this the hard way myself. When my oldest son had a little potty regression, I remember being like, you know, if you keep having accidents, I'm going to take away like some animal that was in his bed. And I look back and I'm like, that was so mean. Like, that's not what he needed. And it didn't help at all. Like he just like looked at me like peed his pants. He was like, I don't care. So never use punishments or threats of any kind. We're going to do something totally different with that, which I will explain in a minute. And night training. Okay, so this one, I'm glad I'm catching hopefully all of you before you stress about this. Day training and night training are totally different things. One is teaching your kid a skill. Like, can you listen to your body? Can you communicate it? Do you know like where to go and how to pull your pants? Or you're learning how to wipe. There's all these like pieces to it. You can't train someone's brain to wake their body up when they have to pee, right? There are things you can do to help them not have to pee in the middle of the night, like limiting liquids after bedtime. You know, if I'm catching any of you when you still have like a bottle as a part of your bedtime routine, or they're like, you know, funneling milk while you're reading books at bedtime, you can stop that stuff now. That will for sure help down the road, but it's a really developmental thing. There are just as many kids who naturally, when the parents are potty training, or even before, they just don't have to pee in the middle of the night and they're just waking up dry. Like, that's great. That can be a 2-year-old. But there's also, I want to say, I need to look at the exact stat. It's about 10% of kids are still in pull-ups overnight when they're 7. So think about how wide that range is. And it goes back to what, and I say that all the time because it goes back to what I said earlier, that my most stressed out clients are the potty ones. And it's often like the 5, 6, 7-year-olds who are still in pull-ups. And the parents are like, he's in kindergarten, I'm mortified. And I'm like, yeah, you and 10% of America. So it's okay. There are absolutely things you can do. Like ask them if they have to potty before bed. And even for older kids, there's conversations you can have to figure out if like they are waking up and they're just not going, which again, I understand. Like if I wake up at 5 a.m. and have to pee, I'm like, this is the worst day of my life. Like, why do I have to do that? You know, it's like you hate it. So I get it. If your whole life you could just go in your pull up, why wouldn't you just wake up and pee and then go back to sleep? But not something you need to force or train, not a reason to move them to a bed so that they can be night trained. Please don't do the dream pee. I mean, you can if you want, but it sounds terrible. And it's not teaching your kid a skill. It's just waking them up in the middle of the night. So that's my whole spiel on that. We'll talk about a couple of like special circumstances that might come up in the potty training process as well. I'm like really blazing through this, but I want to make sure you guys have time to ask all of your questions if you have them. So daycare and school. This is a big one because daycares and schools can be super supportive. It's funny, just like with sleep, I see things like all over the spectrum. Like ones where I'm like, I want to find out who these people are and like become their best friend. They're so helpful to parents. And ones where I'm like, I'm going to report you to like some sort of organization because this is crazy. So find out what their policies are, because daycares especially will have policies sometimes where they will put kids back in a pull-up if they have accidents, which is like the worst thing you could do because your kids are smart and they're like, cool, I don't want to have to be potty trained. So I'm just going to poop my pants at school. They will give me a diaper back and then I don't have to do this. And then the parents, are kind of being sabotaged inadvertently. So understanding, even when you're interviewing preschools and stuff, I would ask like, if a kid has an accident, what happens? Like, do they have to be potty trained? And schools' interpretation of fully potty trained is very different. A lot of schools, especially like preschools, will be understanding that kids occasionally have accidents, but definitely like understanding what their policies are is really helpful before you like put them into that place. And definitely telling the school too, be like, hey, we're potty training over Memorial Day. So like just heads up when he comes back on Tuesday, like, can you really make sure to like ask him if he has to go and, this whole thing. Yeah. And I would, if you can, I'm sure some of you are working parents. If you can, if at all possible, and this is why I often am talking about these things over long weekends, like try to have a couple of days where they can be at home. 3 or 4 is ideal, especially if you feel like the school is not fully on board with like supporting if there's an accident, just setting yourself up for success and your child up for success. Okay, let's talk about travel a little bit. So I would try in those like very immediate week or 2 after your potty training, avoid like major travel and even like a long road trip if you can. Again, we're just like trying to set them up for success. Not always possible. And making sure you have a mini potty ready to go. I actually do suggest, especially if it's in a month or 2 after potty training, that you do put them in a pull-up if you have a long flight. And I know it sounds crazy. Like Brittany, you just said, don't put them in a pull-up at school. Don't flip-flop between diapers and pull. Yes. However, it's the same as a kid who's potty trained, but is in a crib, like a 3-year-old who's in a crib at home. They understand that. Like kids understand the concept of like, there isn't a potty in my crib, or if they're in a bed and like they don't have access outside of their room to a bathroom. So we just don't have, we don't have a potty in your bed. So you're going to have your diaper on still. Same thing on a plane. Because imagine you have a kid who just learned how to be potty trained 3 weeks ago, and they're just figuring out like, listen to your body, tell your mom you have to go. And now you guys have like a giant man in front of you who's like in the bathroom. You're like racing down the aisle. They're peeing their pants. It's like a whole thing. Also, kids are so gross in bathrooms, like on the airplane. It just like, even when my 3-year-old says she has to pee, I'm like on a plane, I'm like, oh my God. Just because they're licking the walls, So if the best thing you can do is like just have them in a diaper, and as soon as you land, go to the lounge, go to the bathroom, whatever, put them back in their underwear. You're good to go. And I would really suggest having, same I say with sleep stuff, like have you as the person who's kind of leading the charge and has like read the books and taken the course and everything, you be the one to kind of kick things off. And then afterwards, you can catch people up to speed on what to do. But it's tough handing over a process like this to like your nanny or sometimes dad, let's be honest. So having whoever's going to be like the main person in charge, you kick it off, and then later on you can catch people up if you need to. And then sleep and nutrition, because I get asked this a lot, obviously, because I'm a sleep consultant, like, is this going to impact their sleep. And it really shouldn't, especially because ideally we're not like pushing night training on them. I mean, if anything, they're probably tired after a day of potty training because they're working hard, they're doing something totally new, but there isn't like any reason why sleep should be impacted by potty training. I would suggest not trying to do them at the same time. Like, don't try to drop the passy, move them to a bed, go into labor, like whatever else. Don't do anything else crazy while you're trying to potty train because it is a big adjustment for your kid, one thing at a time. And also, I get asked about food as well, like if there's something that's going to happen with their eating because of potty training, and there really shouldn't. I think if your child has like functional constipation or other kinds of like GI issues, I would be talking to your specialist before you potty train just to find out if there's any like, things that you need to be considering. But otherwise, like they should eat normally, nothing really special about that. Okay. I think this is my last section for you guys. So we'll talk about some like do's and don'ts that will hopefully make the process a little bit easier for you. So yeah, I mean, this is like high level. The most common mistakes I'll see people make are starting just too early or waiting way too long. I get it. It sucks. No one like wants to potty train, but at some point it is tougher to do it if they're too old because they really know what's going on. And then they're just like, this sucks. I don't want to do it. And that can be pretty tough. And using like bribes and punishments, like all that stuff tends to backfire. The things we've already talked about, like forcing night training, like trying to drop the nap so that they like will pee in the potty, that's not going to help you. Now they're just like a tired monster and also still not peeing on the potty. And not talking to the school. That will occasionally happen with clients where they come back and they're like, I didn't know daycare was going to put her in a pull-up. So just making sure, like I said, that you talk to the school about it. And this one is really tough, but like forcing them to sit on the toilet and try and being like, you have to try before we leave. You have to go sit on the toilet. That is like, I feel like most families do that. You have to remember that kids are smart. Toddlers want to be in control. The more you make it a big deal, the more they're like, no. So if you're like, oh my God, please, whatever you want, I will just please go sit on the potty. That's like inviting them to push back, right? They want to be in charge. So if you are trying to make them do something, they're even more likely to like withhold and kind of try to take that control back. And definitely like flip-flopping in between, not, using diapers and pull-ups and not like if they beg for one to poop, you give it to them. And other times you're like, no, you really need to learn. Then they don't really know what's going on and they're not actively trying to learn. And releasing control. So this is probably the hardest part. The analogy that I like to use is like you are at the bar and you see like a cute guy or girl, and you're not going to go over and be like, hi, how are you? Do you want to be my boyfriend? No, you're going to be like with your friends, just having the best time with your espresso martini. Like he'll obviously come over because you're so cool. You have to like do that to your child. Like you have to act like, yeah, we're just going to like go to the potty. It's going to be totally fine. If you have to pee, just let me know. Potty's right over there. Like there's lots of nuance that I talk about in my course, but I'm telling you, the do less approach is typically, if not always, what works best. Is you're definitely guiding them towards it and you're modeling, and there's all these different things you can do to kind of like lead the witness, but you are not making a huge deal about it. It's not going to help if you're like, here's a potty party. I got balloons and everything's Paw Patrol themed. And we're all staring at you and we're like, look, it's your potty. Isn't this exciting? And they're like, what? My parents are freaking out. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, it stresses them out. And it often comes from a good place. Like we're trying to make it seem fun, but it ends up being overwhelming to them because they're little. So you do want to watch them like a hawk. Model yourself. Daddy, can you pause the movie? I think I have to go pee-pee. Go pee. I feel so much better now. I'm glad I went pee-pee. Then they don't even know. It's not even about them, but they're listening and they're like, got it. She feels so much better. They did pause the movie. I won't miss anything fun. This is great. Listen to your body. And then if they do have accidents, again, I'm not saying you should be like, that's okay. We all have accidents. Like you should be like, pee-pee goes in the potty, but we're not like punishing it or making a huge deal about it. And as much as you can, try not to act pissed off. It's really hard. You're going to be like, oh my God, I literally left for 1 second. Like, how did he just have an accident? But that's why I would say have a partner with you. If you can have like a husband or wife or grandma be with you at the same time, so you can kind of tag team. If you need to go have a bottle of wine, let grandma take over, that's fine. These are your mantras. This is what I want you to say to yourself as you're doing it. They are not going to go to college in a diaper. I promise. You're going to get through day one and be like, we got one pee on the potty. Obviously, my child has some sort of disease and like everything's terrible. You're going to be spiraling. That's not happening. You're playing hard to get. You're not making a big deal about it. You're like, okay, we're just going to go when we're ready. That sounds good. And try, if you are feeling stressed about it, which is really hard not to, you can be, just try not to let them see it, right? You don't want them to get stressed and notice how stressed you are. They are smart. They can do this. They're doing their best. We're all trying, and we're all going to make, you are accidentally going to get upset, or you're going to try to use candy one time because you thought maybe let's just see if it will help. That's okay, because they're making mistakes too, because we're all human. And what they do today is not indicative of what they can do. And I think that's like parenting 101, right? Is oftentimes we're stuck in what's happening now and not giving our kids a chance to show us what they can do. They're capable of so much more than we think. So that is it. That is like the whole spiel. And what I will say before I want to open it, Kendall, if anybody has questions. So I do have a potty course, and I know since some of you are probably going to be starting potty training this weekend, if you get my potty course within the next, I guess it's like 24 hours before this kickoff, you will have access to Troop Potty training for free. So what Troop Potty training is my group potty training I'm doing this weekend. If you guys are 80s babies, like millennials, geriatric millennials like me, do you guys remember Troop Beverly Hills? Remember that movie? That is me trying to be clever. I called it Troop Potty training. There will be Phyllis Neffler gifts. We'll be doing like live events. You can ask me questions as you're going through the process. And we're going to have a Slack channel where I'm going to do office hours, and you can chat with other parents who are potty training, because it's a stressful thing. And most of the time you don't have someone to talk to while you're doing it. So this way you can like find other parents who are like, yeah, holy shit, literally, this is what happened in our backyard. You guys can all chat about it. So you will have access to that for free. I'm selling it for $99, but you'll get it for free if you buy the potty course the next day. So Kendall, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them from all the people.
Sure. So one came through. When you're starting this, are you really not allowed to leave the house because they're supposed to be naked the whole time?
Kind of, yeah. Not like for a long time, but at least for the first day, but probably the first 2 or 3 days. I would say two days, pretty much everybody, even if they're doing great. I know it's hard, but yes.
Is there, so the 3-step is called that versus a 3-day process for a reason, that it's not going to take necessarily 3 days. But what is maybe the average training length overall that you see?
Yeah, I would say most kids after a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at most, should be ready for underwear. And I think some of it is personal choice. Like some parents would feel, and some of this is open to interpretation, right? But I would expect within 2 weeks that like they're in underwear, and you maybe are still very conscious of like, you would kind of have started to understand how frequently they have to go to the bathroom and when, and you're like, buddy, like remember to listen to your body if you have to go pee pee, because you're like, it's been a few hours since you went. But for the most part, they're not having many accidents. And like you're able, and if they do, it's like a dribble and you're able to be like, oh, remember pee pee goes in the potty, and it's like pretty seamless. And I will say that not every kid, but it's about 50 to 60%, I would say, will have a little bit, I hate the word regression, but like a little blip. And it might even be like 2 months later where they have like 2 days where they have a couple of accidents, and you will spiral and think that something's wrong. And then you're not going to make a big deal about it. And then they'll just go back to normal, and it just won't be an issue again. And it's normal for kids to have a rogue accident, even like a year or two after they were potty trained. Like I will tell you, because now my oldest is 8, and I have friends, you know, he's in first grade. And I remember there was a kid in his first grade class who had an accident like a month ago, just like a rogue accident, and had to go home. He's fine. Never had it again. So that's normal.
Is there a point at which maybe it doesn't seem like it's working and you should take a break from it, and then do you restart it at a later point?
Yes, yes. I think especially the times that I've had families do, like I've suggested they do that, is typically when the child just clearly was not ready. Like they started too young. It was like, you know, a 27, 28-month-old. And it was very clear to the parents that it just wasn't connecting for them. So it wasn't like a behavioral pushback thing. It was like they just like did not get it. They were just like peeing their pants and like didn't seem to understand what to do and just did not care. That would be a very good reason to stop. And if there's something very serious going on. Like I had a little girl who was the right age, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just, I don't know why, she had an issue where she stopped peeing altogether. Like she wouldn't even pee in a diaper, and had a UTI. And I told them, like, you guys should not be doing this right now. Let's give it a couple of months and we'll try it again. So anytime there is kind of like a serious reason why you need to stop, I would suggest you stop and you wait like a few months and not have it be a stressor for you. Like, are we going to try again this weekend? And you almost want the child to forget about it altogether. And it's like a fresh start, not like a anxiety inducing thing every weekend about like what's going to happen with the potty. Yeah.
Okay. I've heard this from a lot of folks in my network that, or mom friends, that they will pee on the potty, but pooping is just another issue.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's tough. And it's true. It's not every kid, but there are definitely some who really push back on that. So my suggestion is to approach them the same way and don't like assume it's going to be a problem. But if you also have a kid, because most 3 year old, I should say most, my clients, but a lot of 3 year olds are still napping. And obviously they're still in the pull up overnight. If you have a kid who's withholding and like saving it for their pull up, don't do anything about it. And I know that sounds crazy. Like, how is that advice? You can't force them to do it. And if you make a big deal about it, they're going to do it more. So what you would do is if you smell it, you're going to change it. You say, "Uh-oh, looks like you went poopy. Poopy goes in the potty." And you don't make a big deal about it. Like nothing. You don't say it's okay. You don't say, you don't get mad at them. And I'm telling you, because I've seen this happen dozens of times. They just decide one day that they're going to go in the potty. And that's it. You just don't make a big deal about it. I mean, it's not a good thing, but they will do it, especially if you have a kid who has historically pooped overnight. Because some kids do, like their whole life they were pooping at midnight. They'll get there.
Um, Here's a question. Does it matter if you're doing those first few days, naked days, indoors or outdoors, as if you have like a private backyard? Okay.
Oh, yeah. If anything, I like prefer that you have the outside space just because it's nice to get some fresh air and not like ruin your stuff. And some people are like, we have like a really nice couch. And I'm like, or like, they've like an oriental rug from their grandpa. They're like, I just don't want him to destroy it. Which honestly, I think that stuff is overblown. In my mind, before I potty trained my oldest, I had this vision there's just gonna be like poop smeared all over the house. It's like he pooped once and it happened to be outside and it was like a normal small poop that he has. They don't suddenly have like diarrhea. But yes, I think if you can use outside space, it's nicer for everyone. And luckily, no matter where you are in the country, hopefully it's warm enough now. You can. Yeah.
What about the types of toilets that you should be using? Is there a difference or a preference between the ones that sit on top of the regular adult toilet versus one on the ground?
That is a great question. And I will also send you, if you want to share it with people, a link to my Amazon storefront that I have like a potty list that has products in it. But what I suggest getting is two different things. So getting one potty, like a seat cover, basically where there's steps and has handles so that not only can kids like help climb up it, but also to grip if they have to poop, right? It's like something to help them kind of meander the whole thing as an option, but then also have like a mini potty. I really like the Baby Bjorn one, but it doesn't really matter. They're all kind of the same. And if you have a big house, and you have like more than one place you think you'll be a lot during potty training, or if like getting to the nearest bathroom, like if you're thinking through, we'll probably do this in the playroom or the front yard. Like if getting to the potty is very far away, I would have multiple mini potties as well. And they're like $20 or something. Just because part of it is like you want your child to be rewarded with like making it to the potty. So not making it like super cumbersome. If like the one with the handles is on the third floor and you're like, they're going to have like 2 seconds to get to the potty when they are first starting. So I would have both. Some kids immediately want to use the big potty. Others are like small potty loyalists for months. And the parents are like, we need to, like, you need to stop using the little potty, but address that if you get to it. Yeah.
Great. Um, and there was a question on the best way to clean the potty. I think that also might be answered from the specific ones in your Amazon store, because I know some
Yes.
are easier than others.
Yeah, and all of them, I mean, nothing that I suggest isn't, I know, we're trying to live a plastic-free life these days, all of us, but I mean, just getting the like ones that are easy to clean. I would not get anything fancy that has like leather trim. I mean, don't make your life hard. Yeah, most of the ones that they sell are kind of the same. Yeah.
I think those were some of the main questions that came through and some of mine. I think this was super helpful. Some of the main points, I guess, that I took away were the ideal age to wait and do this is 30 to 35 months, which I think is
Mhm.
super helpful to hear, because I know with my 2-year-old, it feels like all of a sudden everyone's talking about doing it and asking me if I'm doing it. And I'm not sure if I feel in a rush. So it's nice to feel validated by an expert.
Totally. Totally.
Um, the readiness piece, being able to take off the pants on their own, I think that's interesting and something that I hadn't necessarily thought about. No bribing.
Mm-hmm.
Nights, the neurological development could range from age 2 to 8, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
broad.
Mm-hmm.
And don't try to do sleep training, dropping a pacifier, etc., while also potty training, which I think is great because I think a lot of times other people will say rip all of the band-aids off at the same time, but why not make it a little bit easier on yourself?
Totally. And it's like, these skills are different things. When it comes to something like potty, yeah, you're like teaching them all the potties, like pee and poop at the same time. And if you're sleep training, you're doing all the sleep things, but none of those things don't relate to each other, right? So like teaching them to potty train, but then also taking away their passy that they love at the same time. They're already like, this was a stressful day. And you're like, you can't have your passy too. It's like, that's not nice. It's fine. And yes, don't feel pressure. When you said that about people talking to you about it, it reminded me, I remember I posted on Instagram when my oldest was 2, and he was in these like cute little overalls with like the very hungry caterpillar on. They were so cute. And some like bitchy mom, who's not my friend, some woman in my town, like commented like, how can he wear those for potty? Like how does he like get ready for potty when he has those on? And I was like, he's not potty trained, Ellen. Like, are you trying to bait me into like telling you my child is still in diapers? He's fine. He's in diapers. He's okay. So don't let those shamey moms get to you. That's their problem, not yours.
And the fact that it's not related to intellectual capability, I think is something that people need to remember.
Totally. Totally. The same way early walkers are not going to the NFL and early talkers are not going to Harvard. It's just the age they decided to do it. That's all.
Well, I think that's probably it then. So for everyone who joined, we'll be sending out a recording afterwards. And Brittany, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully some folks will also sign up to be part of your training boot camp this weekend.
Yes. Hope to see some of you there. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.